Welcome to the Workers' Reading Room. Tonight I will be reading Chapter 19 of F.I.S.T. by Joe Eszterhas, but first a quick recap. The previous chapter begins at the picket line of the Wildcat strike led by Abe in San Francisco. Abe is approached by a man sent by Vince Doyle. The man tells Abe that F.I.S.T. does not condone this strike and it must be disbanded. After Abe refuses, the man and his lackeys get into their trucks and ram the picket line, killing Abe's right-hand man in the process. The next day, Abe ends the strike, not wanting any more of his men getting killed. Later, Senator Madison, in an attempt to get something from Johnny, invites Johnny to a dinner party, where Johnny proceeds to act the buffoon and embarrass the senator in front of his guests. When they meet privately, Johnny tells Madison to back off, revealing that he has information that will ruin his chances at becoming president. Madison refuses to make a deal. The chapter ends with Madison and the Rackets Committee calling in witnesses, including Babe Milano, to testify at the hearing. Getting nothing out of the spectacle caused by Milano, the senator begins preparations to have Vince Doyle and Johnny testify, and he has high hopes. And now, F.I.S.T., Chapter 19. At a union hall in Brooklyn, Johnny stood in front of 300 loudly cheering men. His shirt sleeves were rolled up. He was without a tie. Sweat streamed down his face. "The man that's trying to railroad us with this great crusade," Johnny shouted. "The man painting us all kinds of dirt. He can't even keep his own life in decent order." The men cheered. "We know why they're driving their railroad against us. We know the 8% hike in our paychecks is what's up their craw. Well, I'm telling you, it ain't gonna work. The next time out, we're going up to 10. The men cheered. "And then to 12. The men cheered. "And then to 14. The men cheered wildly. Johnny paused and watched them. "The country's truckers ain't gonna get railroaded by no committee," he cried. "The hell with them. We're the ones that put the railroads out of business." Vince Doyle was a model of rectitude as he walked into the hearing room. He wore a gray suit, a white shirt, a navy blue tie, and the horn-rimmed glasses which he usually only wore when reading. He was somber and deadpan, and as he sat at the witness table, he looked almost professorial. He was flanked by two young attorneys, John Howard Harper's assistants, who sat protectively beside him whispering advice even before Cole Madison began asking questions. Vince Doyle swore to tell the truth, and Cole Madison smiled, as if on cue. "State your name, please," Cole Madison said. Vince Doyle looked at him and in a flat monotone recited, "I respectfully decline to answer because I honestly believe my answer might incriminate me." Cole Madison grinned. "Did you say honestly, sir?" Some of the spectators laughed. "Sir," Cole Madison smiled, "do you honestly believe that if you told us what your name is, your name, what people call you, that it would incriminate you?" Doyle talked to his lawyers. "It might," he said. "I must say," Cole Madison said, "that I have never met anyone whose name is such a cross to him." The spectators laughed. "I'm going to assume, sir," Cole Madison said, "that your name is Vincent Doyle, that you are a national vice president of the Federation of Interstate Truckers, that you were born in Cleveland, Ohio, and that you have been a lifelong friend of Mr. John J. Kovac. I respectfully decline to answer. I haven't asked any questions," Cole Madison said. "All I made were assumptions." The spectators laughed. "Isn't it a fact, Mr. Doyle," Cole Madison said, "that previous to your association with the Federation of Interstate Truckers, you were a business partner of Mr. Anthony Milano?" "I respectfully decline to answer. In an interstate bootlegging operation?" "I respectfully decline to answer," Vince Doyle monotoned, "on the grounds that my answer might incriminate me." "And wasn't the third partner of that bootlegging operation Mr. Shondor Gerke of Detroit?" "I respectfully decline to answer." Didn't you introduce Mr. Milano and Mr. Gerke to Mr. John J. Kovac? I respectfully declined to answer. And didn't Mr. Milano and Mr. Gerke have a controlling interest in the Haley Jukebox Company, headquartered in Pontiac, Michigan? I respectfully declined to answer. And didn't the Midwest Council of the Federation of Interstate Truckers, under the aegis of Mr. Kovac, force businesses to patronize the Haley Jukebox Company because of your friendship with Mr. Milano and Mr. Gerke? I respectfully declined to answer. I keep hearing the word respectfully, Cole Madison said. He smiled. You seem to have a great deal of respect, Mr. Doyle, for this whole process. The spectators laughed. I respectfully declined to answer, Vince Doyle said. Yes, I know, Cole Madison said. I somehow assumed you might say that. The spectators laughed again. Now, reaching more recent times, Mr. Doyle, isn't it a fact that you helped your friend Mr. Milano secure a $1,200,000 loan from your union's pension fund? I respectfully declined to answer. Let me understand, Cole Madison said. He paused. Do you feel that if you gave a truthful answer to this committee about helping gangsters with union money with funds of your members, that your answer would tend to incriminate you? It might, Vince Doyle said. You honestly feel that way? Vince Doyle consulted his lawyers. I do. That's a marvelous self-admission, Mr. Doyle, Cole Madison said. I applaud your candor. Isn't it a fact, Mr. Doyle, he continued, that without their consent, your membership's funds are being used to further the interests of organized crime in this country? I respectfully decline to answer that you and Mr. Kovac are indirectly subsidizing drug traffic, prostitution, illegal gambling in this country? I object to this line of questioning, one of Doyle's attorneys said. Answer the question, Mr. Doyle, Madison snapped. I respectfully decline to answer, Vince Doyle said, because I honestly believe my answer might tend to incriminate me. Madison smiled. Tend, Mr. Doyle. Is that what you said? Tend. Let the record show, Cole Madison said, that Mr. Doyle has made a wise choice of four-letter words. The spectators laughed. Mr. Doyle, Cole Madison said slowly, is there any question I can possibly ask you the answer to which will not incriminate you? Doyle consulted his lawyers. Are you a man, Mr. Doyle? Cole Madison smiled. Or are you a worm? I refuse to answer the question, the spectators roared. Cole Madison banged his gavel. Thank you, Mr. Doyle. I think you've finally answered one of my questions. The spectators roared again. Cole Madison smiled. Vince Doyle glared at him. The plan was simple. They would paralyze the nation's capital. They would cause the greatest traffic jam in the history of Washington, D.C. As Vince Doyle testified, more than 200 trucks, tankers, flatbeds, vans, panels, tractors would converge on the city. The majority of them were simply to circle through the city in a show of solidarity, greeting each other with blasts of their air horns. But other trucks were to suffer accidents or breakdowns in strategic locations. The locations included the Capitol Building, Washington Circle, the Pentagon, the Baltimore-Washington Parkway, and 3 of the 6 major bridges leading across the Potomac. In all cases, the mishaps were to occur in the outbound lanes so that traffic leaving the city would be brought to a standstill, while incoming traffic would be unimpeded. The White House was a special case. Here there were to be 2 disruptions, one in the front and one in the rear. Of the 2, the one in the front was considered the more important, for the breakdown at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue was tailor-made for the television cameras. This special job, putting the push on the Oval Office, was delegated to a man named Wally Brubaker, a burly ex-Marine and F.I.S.T organizer from Hagerstown, Maryland. A feisty man of 43 with a hair-trigger temper, Brubaker came from a family of hardcore union men. His father was a steelworker, his brothers with the meat packers and railroad men. In addition, Brubaker harbored a smoldering hatred of the federal government, stemming from his discharge from the Marine Corps for a minor infraction of regulations. At the time of the infraction, Brubaker had 14 years of service, and it was his contention that the government had given him the boot to deprive him of his retirement pay. So now, on this day, as Wally Brubaker prepared to visit Washington, he had no compunctions about hitting the White House. He was, he felt, many years overdue. He climbed into the cab of a Diamond T tractor in Hagerstown at 12:30 p.m. Behind him was a battered and rusted drop-bed trailer loaded with a dirt-encrusted yellow bulldozer. The bulldozer, which had been out of service for more than 2 years, was tightly chained in place. As he eased his rig onto Interstate 70, Wally Brubaker looked like a down-on-his-luck contractor heading for some distant and dubious excavation site. His trip to the White House would take him 2.5 hours. Elsewhere, other drivers were already on the road or preparing to leave. Jake Grabsky, heading north on Interstate 95 out of Richmond, Virginia, was piloting a gleaming silver and red 8-axle tanker rig consisting of a full trailer tank, a semi-trailer tank, and a Mack diesel tractor with a turbocharged engine. Grabsky, whose eventual destination was the Pentagon, was heading for the intersection of 95 and Route 1, where he hoped to nail down a considerable number of the more than 9,000 vehicles in the Pentagon parking lots. Eli Jennings, at the wheel of a rig loaded with soft drinks destined for the District of Columbia beverage stores, was also on Interstate 95, but moving south out of Camden, New Jersey. His assignment was to knock out the Francis Scott Key Memorial Bridge. Ramsey Johnson, a giant of a black man, was moving south on Interstate 83 from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Johnson was known inside the Federation of Interstate Truckers as a strong arm, a man who could be relied on to get results. On this day, Ramsey Johnson was hauling a Dorsey flatbed trailer loaded with steel rods, the kind used to reinforce concrete. Johnson had drawn the Capitol building, and the tie lines on his load had been specially designed to break away at his command from the cab. The dump was to be made at East Capitol Street and First Street, directly in front of the Capitol, with the Supreme Court building and the Library of Congress on either side. And there were others. Charlie Drake, out of Altoona, Pennsylvania, with a load of electronics components meant to jam the Arlington Memorial Bridge. Dick Newman from Baltimore, hauling a load of refrigerated produce, headed for the Mason Memorial Bridge. Rudolph Alonsky of Wilmington, Delaware, headed for a breakdown near Anacostia Park on the Baltimore-Washington Parkway. And Teddy Heater, dispatched from Pennsylvania to create a hindrance around Washington Circle with a load of furniture. To them were added platoons of support personnel, men who wore blue or green work clothes over their gray sweatshirts, each of them behind the wheel of a monster headed for the nation's capital, each of them ready to throw a special monkey wrench. They began to arrive in force about 1:30 p.m., but instead of heading into the city, they circled the district on the Capitol Beltway, stalling for time, waiting for the appointment. By 2 p.m., there were more than 150 trucks lazily circling the Capitol, some going clockwise, others counterclockwise, in the manner of a mammoth motorized picket line. They kept their horns silent, and as they passed one another in counter-rotational sweeps, they looked not unlike an armada of whales coming in for a kill. Meanwhile, business in Washington was going on as usual. At the Mayflower Hotel, both the Rotary Club and the Lions Club were lingering over coffee after their weekly meetings. At the White House, the seemingly endless line of visiting tourists, who would number more than 9,000 that day, continued their patient rounds. The changing of the guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier took place as usual, and at the Pentagon more than a few generals were recovering from lunch with a visit to the meditation room. Hot air hung over the city, the doldrums of summer, a lassitude that put dogs on their sides and pigeons to rest. Exactly at 2:15 p.m., the rigs driven by Brubaker, Grabsky, Jennings, Johnson, Drake, Newman, Alonsky, and Heater swung off the Capitol Beltway and moved into the city. These trucks, the advance guard and main body muscled by virtue of their missions, were to slip into the city before the authorities realized they were being invaded. These trucks alone could tie up Washington traffic and make the dramatic point. Each additional truck which succeeded in entering the city would only further the dramatization of the goal. Brubaker made his way toward the White House by way of Connecticut Avenue. Only once, just outside of Georgetown, did he run into trouble. A mounted policeman pulled his horse next to the cab and asked Brubaker if he had a permit to transport a bulldozer through town. Brubaker looked at the officer and said, "Look, buddy, if you want to hold up the project at the White House, that's okay with me. All I know is they told me to deliver this equipment." The policeman brushed him on with a wave of his hand. The other drivers encountered no opposition at all. At 2:30 p.m., the main body of trucks swept off the Capitol Beltway. At each of the nearly 20 off-ramps and exits and feeder roads leading to the city, a convoy of trucks suddenly materialized. Most of the exits were able to handle the strain, but at both the Baltimore-Washington Parkway exit and the Henry Shirley Memorial Highway exit, there were delays. More than 35 trucks hit each of them at once. Yet one by one, the drivers threaded their way into Washington. Those approaching from the southwest immediately saw that Jennings, Drake, and Newman had successfully sabotaged the bridges over the Potomac. Outgoing movement on the Key, Arlington, and Mason bridges was either stopped completely or reduced to a creep. On the Key Bridge, Jennings moved his rig diagonally across all lanes of traffic and cut his motor. He was the victim of a jammed transmission. He got out of the cab and inspected his motor with a wrench and a screwdriver. His transmission was then, in fact, jammed. Drake simply stopped in the middle of the Arlington Bridge and turned on his flashers. He probed around underneath his motor and a large pool of slippery fluid formed around his truck. On the Mason Bridge, Newman stopped his truck and deliberately severed his main brake lines. At other key points, it was the same. Grabsky stopped his rig at Interstate 95 and Route 1, popped his flashers, and got out to investigate. By the time he had circled the truck in search of the trouble, every tire on his rig was deflating. Within minutes, the two silver and red tankers sat on puddles of rubber. That took care of the Pentagon. Alonsky ripped his ignition wires apart, then swore he didn't know what was wrong as the Baltimore-Washington Parkway became a slow-moving nightmare. Outside the Capitol building, Ramsey Johnson arrived with his load of steel rods and pulled the cord that released the entire cargo onto the street. More than 900 rods tumbled to the pavement like a giant stack of twisted toothpicks. The black man got out of his cab and sat down on the curb, shaking his head and shrugging his shoulders to all questions. Brubaker, meanwhile, had made his way to the White House. Approaching from the east along Pennsylvania Avenue, he drove his bulldozer past the front of the executive mansion, then on to Jackson. At Jackson, he nosed the Diamond T caddy corner across the intersection, aiming it straight for Blair House, the president's traditional guest quarters. When he had the rig straddled diagonally across the intersection, the bulldozer approximately dead center, he cut the motor and got out to investigate. He was immediately surrounded by a contingent of White House guards, Secret Service agents, and police. "I'm telling you," Brubaker shouted to them, "there's something wrong with my rig. I felt it up front. It jerked me right through the intersection." A tall, middle-aged man built along the lines of a concrete power station stepped up to him. He wore a dark suit and his hair was clipped short. His face was noticeably devoid of laugh lines. "You're going to move this thing," he said quietly. "Fuck you," Brubaker said. "I know what I'm talking about." He jerked a thumb toward the bulldozer. "There's something screwed up back there." The tall man remained expressionless. Then he touched a finger to Brubaker's shirt and said, "Move it. No questions, no trouble." "Listen, you son of a bitch," Brubaker said. Move it." "Move it?" Brubaker yelled. "You want me to move it? All right, I'm going to move it." He leaped into the cab of the Diamond T and gunned the Cummins diesel engine. It screamed and roared. The stacks shot open and clouds of black smoke blew into the air. Brubaker sat there for some seconds, vibrating in his seat, scowling at the tall man in the dark suit, and then he popped the clutch. There was a thunderous crash, the wrenching sound of metal, The Diamond T leaped forward, but the trailer and bulldozer stayed in the same spot and dropped to the pavement. Brubaker pumped his brakes and stopped the tractor not more than 10 feet from the fallen trailer. He jumped from the cockpit and stalked toward the man in the dark suit. "God damn it, you son of a bitch," Brubaker yelled. "I told you there was something wrong. Now what the fuck am I supposed to do, huh, smart guy?" "The first thing you can do," the man in the suit said calmly, "is move the tractor out of the way." He pointed to a bus zone. "Over there." "The fuck I will," Brubaker said. "You move it." He flipped the man the key and walked away, leaving the astonished group of policemen and the dirty yellow bulldozer nose deep in the pavement behind him. At the same time, behind the White House, Gilbert Orlander, a member of F.I.S.T. Local 44 in Alexandria, Virginia, hauled a 40-foot aluminum trailer down Madison Place and jackknifed it in front of a White House driveway. He got out and walked to the guard shack at the White House gate. "Steering column broke," Orlander said simply. When the Secret Service tried to move the truck, they discovered that the steering wheel spun free as a yo-yo. By 3:45 p.m., the paralysis of Washington was complete. Traffic on virtually every major artery had been reduced to a crawl. As the success of the operation became clear, truck drivers who had joined the assault as a lark were inspired to other unplanned actions. Some stopped their rigs anywhere and erected barricades around them with red rubber traffic cones or fiery highway flares. And on the north side of the street, on 16th Street near Rock Creek Park, persons unknown stole a District of Columbia highway maintenance truck, a small flatbed which was equipped with a walled town and country push-button striping machine, a piece of machinery used for painting traffic lanes on the city streets. By mid-afternoon, squiggly new painted lines were in the streets all over Georgetown. At 4 p.m., the first of hundreds of thousands of government and civilian workers began leaving their offices. The Pentagon alone disgorged some 25,000 people. Some are tourists visiting the Smithsonian Institution, the National Archives Building, the Washington Monument, or any of 100 other historic attractions, now began searching for their cars or taxis to take them to hotels or out of the city. They found they couldn't even get their cars out of parking lots, let alone through city streets. Public transportation was at a complete standstill. Throughout the nation's capital, the fastest means of travel was by foot. The air was filled with the menacing sonorous rumble of air horns, now backed by the piercing, shrill wail of 100 police sirens. Their limousine was stalled in traffic. Hundreds of car horns created a deafening, cacophonous roar. Cole Madison turned the radio up. "Motorists are advised to avoid the Key Bridge, where a tractor-trailer has broken down with a jammed transmission." "A jammed transmission," Cole Madison laughed. "Did you hear that, Dave? That's pretty good." "This is incredible," Dave Roberts said. Cole Madison smiled ruefully. "It's push, that's all. Why shouldn't he push us?" They listened to the radio. "More than 200 drivers, mostly from New Jersey and Pennsylvania, are taking part in today's action. Among those caught in the squeeze was the President of the United States, whose driver was forced to take an alternate route after a jackknife truck carrying a bulldozer blocked a White House driveway." "Sure," Cole Madison smiled. "Why not bulldoze the president? Anyone else who gets in his way?" At his home in Shaker Heights, Ohio, Federation of Interstate Truckers President Johnny Kovac denied that his union's leadership had any knowledge of today's action. Kovac said he would speak to his membership to avoid a similar mass breakdown when he appears in front of the Senate Rackets Committee next week. "We must remember to thank him for that, Dave," Cole Madison smiled. His words were nearly drowned out by the roar of hundreds of car horns. "I'll tell you something, Dave," Cole Madison said, his voice crackling and firm. "All the trucks and all the horn honking in the world won't keep me from putting Kovac on that stand." Late at night, Cole Madison paced the living room floor of Abe Belkin's home in San Francisco. "I can't do it without you," he said. "Without you, he's won." Abe smiled. "You've lost. Isn't that what you're worried about?" The hell with me, Madison said furiously. We're talking about this country. When he sent those trucks into Washington Friday, what was he saying? I'm Johnny Kovac. You push me and I can shut this country down. Abe didn't say anything. He sat on the couch and avoided Madison's eyes. Do you want the Babe Milanos of this country to have that kind of weight? Cole Madison said. I know Milano is a friend of his, Abe said, but I don't know. Don't be naive, Madison said loudly. How long do you think he can control Milano and his friends? When are they going to start telling him what to do? Where will it end? Pushing the president? Shutting the highways down? Forcing the Justice Department to look the other way while the underworld gets rich? Abe smiled. You don't really believe that yourself. The hell I don't, Madison snapped. He can do it. He paused. If he shuts the highways down, what the hell would we do? Call the National Guard out all over the country? Bring paratroopers in? Fight a war on the turnpikes and interstates? He's the only brother I ever had, Abe said. His voice was choked. Don't you understand that? For God's sake, Cole Madison said. Is that what you fought all your life for? Abe looked at him, then looked away. He put his head in his hands. When Johnny walked into the Senate caucus room with John Howard Harper and Bernie Marr, many of the spectators cheered. A few people had signs that said, Stop the Railroad and Senate Scab Committee. A trucker went up to Johnny and said, They ain't gonna push us. Johnny grinned. Goddamn right they ain't. He walked to the witness table and sat down. Harper and Bernie Marr sat behind him in the first row. Johnny looked at Cole Madison and smiled. He took his coat off and draped it over an empty chair next to him. May we have quiet, please? Cole Madison said. He banged his gavel. I'm sure we all want to hear every single word Mr. Kovac has to say. The spectators fell silent. Johnny grinned. Cole Madison smiled. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Kovac, since it seems this city is free this morning of the many truck breakdowns which took place the day Mr. Doyle testified. He paused and looked at Johnny. It's nice of you to permit the nation's capital to go about its business today, Mr. Kovac. Johnny grinned. Anything I can ever do to help you with law and order, Senator, I'm always happy to do. Madison smiled. Thank you. Sure, anytime you need help, Senator, call me. The spectators laughed. For the record, Cole Madison said, can you state your full name, please? John Joseph Kovac, but I've never gone by all that formality stuff, Senator. Johnny sounds okay. The spectators laughed. And where were you born, Mr. Kovac? On Ellis Island, right off the boat. Then you're a citizen of this country? I got the birth certificate put up and framed on my wall. Your occupation? I'm the national president, Federation of Interstate Truckers. Some of the truckers in the audience cheered. Johnny smiled. Thank you, Cole Madison said. That takes care of the formalities. You mean we can cut the crap, Johnny said, and get down to what we're here for? The spectators roared. Madison looked at him and smiled. Yes, Mr. Kovac, we can. He paused until the room was silent. Mr. Kovac, how many members do you have in your union? We've got more than 700,000 guys. And what exactly is the scope of your authority as president? We represent the guys that drive your cabs, haul your furniture, pick up your garbage, and deliver anything else. Madison smiled. Is that all? Everything that's on the road is mine. Yours, Mr. Kovac? I get raises for all of them. Doesn't it frighten you, Cole Madison said, to think of all this power in the hands of one man? No. Why not, Mr. Kovac? I don't scare that easy, Senator. The spectators laughed. And the reason is that it's in my hands. It might be bad if it got in the wrong hands, Johnny smiled. But your hands are the right hands? My hands are the ones that got the guys the 8% hike. The spectators laughed. I see, Cole Madison said. He smiled and paused, looking at his notes. Now isn't it a fact, Mr. Kovac, that in your hands the Federation has gained a reputation for strong-arm tactics? All the guys in the Union have strong arms, Senator. The spectators laughed. Please answer the question, Cole Madison said. I don't know what you mean, Senator, Johnny said. I'm just a street kid from the slums. Nobody's going to put me down on my knees. I got a reputation for that. Nobody's going to put my union on its knees. We got a reputation for that. The truckers in the audience cheered. But isn't it a fact, Mr. Kovac, Madison said, that many of your members, especially many of your business agents, have criminal records? Yeah, that's a fact, Senator. Johnny smiled. You admit that, Cole Madison said. Sure. Any union man that went out on strike in the 30s, 40s, he's got a criminal record. The policemen in those days didn't have nothing to do except put us in jail. You want to find a good union man, Senator, all you got to do is make sure he's got an arrest record. The spectators laughed. Isn't it a fact, Cole Madison said, that you've paid the legal fees and continued to pay the salaries of those business agents arrested for criminal offenses? Absolutely, Senator. If he's a union man in good standing, we'll pay those things. Every man is presumed innocent until he's proven guilty. It's part of our Declaration of Independence, Senator. You don't want me to start giving you civics lessons, do you, Senator? No, I really don't want you to do that, Mr. Kovac, Cole Madison smiled. Why do you keep criminals, convicted criminals, in your union? Madison said. I don't know what you're talking about, Senator. I threw the communists out. I'm talking about former bootleggers, armed robbers, extortionists, muscle men. Guys that lift weights? Johnny said. The spectators roared. Answer the question, Mr. Kovac, Cole Madison said. As long as they've done a good job for this union, Senator, that's all I care about. Has Vincent Doyle done a good job for your union? Cole Madison said. Top notch, Johnny said. The best. He's an official of your union? General Vice President. Mr. Kovac, do you believe a union official should be suspended from office if he refuses to answer questions on the grounds of self-incrimination? If he takes the fifth? That's right. It's part of the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, the whole package, right, Senator? A guy's got a right to refuse to answer something if he don't want to, and I ain't gonna can him for it. Why not, Mr. Kovac? Why not? What kind of question is that, Senator? You want me to screw around with George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and all those guys that thought up that stuff? The spectators laughed. Mr. Kovac, Cole Madison said, do you know Anthony Milano? Yes, I do. Your friends? I know him. And your union recently gave one of Mr. Milano's concerns, Aquacade Entertainment Corporation of Las Vegas, a loan of $1,200,000 from your pension fund? That's right. Did Mr. Milano ask you to give him the loan as a favor to him? He talked to the trustees, Senator. Cole Madison smiled. Did he now? Yes, he did, Senator. You're one of the pension fund trustees, aren't you, Mr. Kovac? That's right. And you voted to give him the loan? Along with the other 11 trustees. Madison smiled. How long have you known Mr. Milano? A long time. Madison grinned. Have you and Mr. Milano ever been involved in previous business transactions? Johnny hesitated. I don't remember one. Let me try to refresh your memory, Cole Madison said. What about the Haley Jukebox Company of Pontiac, Michigan? I don't know nothing about that firm, Johnny said slowly. Isn't it a fact, Mr. Kovac, that when you headed the Midwest Council of your union, you forced businessmen to buy Haley jukeboxes? Johnny grinned. How could I force any businessman to do that? Madison smiled and looked at him. By telling bar owners that unless they used Haley jukeboxes, your drivers wouldn't deliver liquor to them. There was a buzz among the spectators. Johnny looked slightly uneasy. No, he said, that's not true. Isn't it a fact, Cole Madison said, that the Haley Jukebox Company was at the time owned by Mr. Anthony Milano? I don't know nothing about. And Mr. Shondor Gerke, Madison said. I don't know nothing about who owns some company I don't know nothing about, Johnny said forcefully. Madison grinned. And isn't it true that to convince you to help his firm, Mr. Milano paid you a bribe? There was a lot of noise among the spectators. Johnny looked startled. That's a lie, he said. Madison paused. A bribe in the form of a wedding present? Some of the reporters ran from the room. Johnny looked preoccupied. Madison banged his gavel for silence. It's a lie you dreamed up for your headlines, Johnny said. You're under oath here, Madison said sharply. I don't give a damn what I'm under. I never took nothing in my life. Madison grinned at him. John Howard Harper got up from the front row, sat down next to Johnny, and whispered to him. Johnny did not acknowledge his presence. He stared at Madison and waited. Madison looked up from his notes. Have you ever killed anyone, Mr. Kovac? He said. There was pandemonium in the hearing room. You know goddamn well, Johnny said. If you asked me that outside this room, I'd sue you for everything you got. Is your answer no? That's right. What's right? That's right, Johnny said angrily. I never killed nobody. You're sure? Madison said. Johnny said nothing. He glared at Cole Madison. There was a long pause. Madison looked at his notes. Isn't it a fact, Madison said loudly, his voice crisp, that you once killed a man with your own hands? Johnny looked stunned. Several reporters ran from the room. Madison banged his gavel for silence. Isn't it a fact, he said, that in the strike against Talbot's Consolidated Trucking, you beat a man's head against the floor of a boxcar and left him in a pool of blood? Johnny stared at Madison. Harper talked excitedly to Johnny. There was bedlam in the room. Answer the question, Mr. Kovac, Madison said. Johnny kept staring at him. Answer the question. I'm not going to sit here, he shouted, and be called all kinds of names and be accused of all kinds of things without... Answer the question. A shred of evidence. I tried to give you the truth. That's not what you want. You're not answering the question, Madison said. You want to see your name in the paper tomorrow next to a bunch of crazy charges. We can hold you in contempt, Madison said. Johnny got up from the table. The hell with you. Do anything you want. On my lawyer's advice, I'm not going to answer nothing more. He turned and walked out of the hearing room as Madison pounded the gavel for order and the photographers tried to take his picture. Bernie, Marr, and Harper helped him through the crowd. Johnny looked dazed. Madison watched him. This meeting is adjourned, he said. We will reconvene next Tuesday, July the 7th. He hurried through the long, echoing Senate corridors, Bernie, Marr, and Harper on either side of him, and as he walked out the front door of the big marble building, he stopped suddenly on the top step and stood there. The big trucks were down in the street, dozens of them, and as their drivers saw Johnny, they blasted their air horns and waved to him. You want me? You got me, Johnny yelled, his voice hoarse, his fist high in the air. The men hit their air horns again, and he walked down the long stairway to the limo. Is it true? Harper said the moment the door was closed. Johnny didn't even look at him. The limo wound its way through traffic. Harper fidgeted and cleared his throat. Look, Harper said finally, I won't ask you if it's true, but what can he prove? He sounded sure. He was setting you up. He has to have a witness. Who can the witness be? What will he say? Did someone see you? Johnny stared straight ahead and smiled. Who knows, counselor? You don't seem to understand, Harper said. This can destroy you. I'm simply looking out for your interests. Who saw you? Why don't you shut your mouth, counselor? Johnny said quietly. Harper slumped back against the seat. No one said anything. The limo raced through traffic. Soon as we get back, Johnny said to Bernie, I want to see Vince. There was a bottle of bourbon on the desk in Johnny's office. He walked around the room, smoking a little cigar. He looked exhausted. Vince Doyle stalked him as he walked. I don't care how many years ago it was, Vince Doyle said angrily. The guy died. Madison's gonna have Abe saying he tried to stop you. You kept pounding the guy's head. Jesus Christ, Johnny. It's a murder rap. Think what it's gonna do to the union." "What the hell do you want me to do?" Johnny said. "How was I supposed to know he'd—" He paused. His voice was low, broken. "We grew up in the same house, Vince. I told you the day'd come that son of a bitch would knife you." "All right, Vince, you told me." There was a momentary silence. "There's only one thing to do," Vince Doyle said. Johnny looked at him, then looked away in disgust. Doyle said, "I'll talk to Milano." Johnny turned on him furiously. "No, we'll deny it. We'll hammer it through." "Deny it?" Doyle laughed sarcastically. "What about that stuff about the wedding present? The only way he could know about that. He heard us. He's gonna pin you for taking a bribe." "I didn't take nothing," Johnny said angrily. "You were there. I didn't take it. How's it gonna look?" "I don't care. I'm not gonna—" "He's gonna ruin you, Johnny," Vince Doyle said angrily. "He ruins you, he ruins the union. Think about the men, Johnny. You gotta do it for them." "No," Johnny said furiously. "God damn it, no." In the state office building, Cole Madison sat behind his desk, Dave Roberts in front of him. "I want Belkin here," Madison said angrily. "He can stay at my place." "He says he's not going to hide anywhere," Roberts said. "We're asking him to be smart," Madison said, "not to hide. He says he's the head of his local and he's not going to hide like a criminal." "God damn his idealism," Madison said. "He still doesn't really believe me." "I talked him into agreeing to 2 men from the Bureau. Make sure they're with him 24 hours a day," Madison said. "They'll fly out with him Monday night." Madison shook his head. "Belkin should be here. I don't like it." "Senator," Dave Roberts said, "do you really think Kovac would—" "Dave," Cole Madison said wearily, "please, don't you realize the stakes?" The bottle of bourbon on his desk was empty. He sat slumped in the darkness of his office, staring out his window into the rain. His eyes were red-rimmed, his complexion pale. He lit another little cigar, threw the match into the wastebasket, and looked at the clock. It was almost midnight, 9 o'clock in California. "It smells horrible in here," Karen Chandler said. She stood at the door tentatively, afraid to intrude. "Then stay the hell out," he said. She walked across the room to his desk and stopped. She looked at him. "How are you?" He didn't look at her. He said nothing. "He's won, Johnny, hasn't he?" "He's won nothing," Johnny said. His voice was a growl. "He wouldn't have said those things if—" "He can't prove shit," he said, louder now. "He's just pushing." She paused. "But why, Johnny?" she said. "Did you really—" The words trailed away. She stood there, her eyes on the floor. "Listen," he said. "You weren't down there in the goddamn flats. You don't know." He got up from the desk in front of his window, watching the rain, his back to her. "It was a war," he said. "We were fighting a war." "But people like Milano," she said. He turned on her. "How the hell do you think we got the push? You think the companies just gave everything to us?" She didn't say anything. The rain beat against the windows. "What are you going to do?" she said softly. "I'm gonna fight," he said, turning from her again. "That's all I really know how to do." He paused and laughed softly to himself. "Jesus, this town," he said. "It ain't a whole lot different than the flats." "Is there anything I can do?" "Yeah," he said, his back still to her. "You can leave me alone." She looked at him and stood there a moment, then turned wordlessly and walked out of the office. He stood at the window, staring at the rain. He could see the White House a block away. "Jesus Christ, Abe," he said to himself. He looked at the clock. 12:20, 9:20 in California. He lit the stub of his cigar, sat down, and reached for the telephone. He hunched over it, dialed, ran his fingers through his hair. He waited. He waited. 3 rings, 6 rings. The rings stopped. He heard her voice. "Hello?" "Molly," he said, his voice controlled. "Listen, this is Johnny. Johnny Kovac." He paused. "Don't bullshit me, Molly," he said, his voice rising. "I gotta talk to him. I'm telling you, just put him on." He waited. He heard Abe's voice. "Listen, Abe," he said. He paused, listening. "I don't want to hear that," Johnny said. "We can work it out." He paused. "Abe," he said, "this is crazy." His voice was shaky. "I can fly out there tomorrow and—" He paused. "What the fuck you mean there's nothing to say?" he cried. His voice was choked. "Abe, for Christ's sake, you don't know what you're doing. You're cutting my guts out. You're—" The phone went dead in his hands. The dial tone blared at him. He put the phone down calmly and leaned back in the chair, the cigar in his mouth. He got up suddenly and, in a blind fury, hurled the phone against the wall, then the whiskey bottle, then the ceramic ashtray which Joey made him. He hesitated a moment, his breathing checked, then picked up the glass case and smashed it against the wall. It exploded in 100 pieces. He went to the wall and got down on the floor and picked Gant's buzzer up, and he stood there in the darkness, the tears running down his face. And that is the end of Chapter 19 of F.I.S.T. Thank you for listening to the Workers' Reading Room. Have a good evening.